I need more time. I need time to do that.
Quite the challenge, eh?
I'm out of mana. Out of mana once again. The smaller growths are protecting the larger ones. I lack the needed mana. I need time to prepare that. I lack the needed mana. I lack the needed mana. The light did not protect these knights from the vampires. I'm low on precious mana. I need time to prepare that. The bloom leads beneath the cathedral. That must be the source. I'm low on precious time to prepare that. Out of mana once again. I'm not ready yet. I'm low on precious mana. I need time to prepare that. I'm not ready yet. I'm low on precious mana. never harm another soul.
We've managed to save some for the forge. I'll keep my forge hot. Greetings. How shall I guide my hammer?
not ready yet. I lack the needed mana. I need time to prepare that. I need time to prepare that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
It is done.
Service. Fit for a king.
I'm not ready yet. I lack the needed mana. My bags are full. My burden is too great.
Okay, Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro kidnapped and arrested.
You said kidnapped. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
I mean, I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
The man was sitting home chilling, and he look up and it's all kinds of soldiers
Had Delta Force, not
dropping
just
over
all,
his head.
He
Yeah.
had Delta Force. Like, whether we agree with what happened or not, I gotta give my shout out to the D-Boys. As a Ranger and having worked with Delta a lot, and especially on my later deployments, my last deployment, Delta is not a force that you wanna fuck with. If Delta ever says, hey, we're gonna come after you, it's a wrap. Those are the fastest, most lethal dudes on the planet. On the planet. And the fact that they were able to get him, his wife had just told him, Nicholas, that, hey, I think I hear helicopters. And 3 minutes after that, dude, he couldn't even get to his safe room and close it. They were already in there. And let's not even pass up on the outstanding weaponry that they use. These quote unquote defense was it direct energy weapons. Nothing new, but wow, I never seen them used in combat.
You know, did
Okay, we're going to kick things off this hour with Bridgewater's founder, Ray Dalio, author of multiple books, the latest of which is How Countries Go Broke. We've been having this conversation here at Davos now for many, many years. It's great to have you here. I want to actually just launch into the same conversation we were having basically during commercial break, which is you've been talking for a long time about a breakdown in the world, a breakdown in societies. Joe had asked you, are we there yet? And you said, yeah, we're here. It's happening.
I lack the
Let's
needed
step
mana.
back from the sensation and be clear about what I mean. The monetary order is breaking down. Okay. What I mean by the monetary order is that fiat currency and debt as a storehold of wealth is not being held by central banks in the same way. And that there was a change. The biggest market to move last year was the gold market, far better than the tech market, and so on. And if the U.S. markets underperformed foreign markets because of the fact you could see it in the numbers of the central banks and so on. So let's just look at the fact that on the other side of trade deficits and trade wars, there are capital wars. And so as we're looking at that, and you reported what the stock market and so on, but you didn't report that the gold market is also up 3%.
We did say that earlier this morning. It's up to record levels again, and over.
If you look at what is happening and why it's happening and who's buying it. So let's just take a moment on that capital war issue, okay? We know that both the holders of U.S. dollars-denominated debt, which is money, and those who need it, the United States, are worried about each other, right? So if you have other countries who are holding it and they're worried about each other, and we're producing a lot of it, that's a big issue, right? So you have to explain what is going on with fiat currencies, generally speaking. And now if you take the conflict, you can't ignore the possibility that capital wars, in other words, maybe there's not the same inclination to buy U.S. debt and so on. We at least need to talk about those possibilities and find out who is buying and selling what that is behind these market movements.
And who do you think is behind it?
Well, it's known. It's very clear. you're seeing both the central banks. I can take you down to the specific central banks and what they're doing. Okay, they are because they're. What is money?
We're increasingly buying our own money. That's the lesson of all this.
And the other countries' central banks and sovereign wealth funds and others are buying gold, are buying these assets as a diversifier. Think of it, gold is not a metal to speculate on. It's the second largest reserve currency. It has been the reserve currency, okay? So there's a money, and we're talking about, it's common conversation about what is money. Is it Bitcoin? Is it digital? How does it work, right? So we need to talk about the value of money.
But are there forces at play where this is just predestined to happen, given sort of the way you look at cycles? Or do you say there are things that the administration's doing or that others are doing that are creating this moment, whether it be tariffs? We just had Sergio Amati from UBS on. He said, you can do a lot of things, but at some point there is a tipping point. You can't do too many, and maybe we're there.
There are circumstances that have happened repeatedly that are analogous in history that you can look to. When you have a certain amount of debt, okay, and that means others are holding it as debt assets, such as bonds, okay, and you have to sell a lot more. There's a supply-demand issue, okay. Also, when they're holding that, they have to believe in that in terms of the supply-demand. And when you have conflicts, international geopolitical conflicts, even allies do not want to hold each other's debt. They prefer to go to a hard currency. This is logical, and it's factual, and it's repeated throughout history.
So what would Ray Dalio do with his money right now?
Well, I have had, let me answer it this way. If you don't have any views on markets, and you say, what should be my strategic asset allocation mix? You would have a diversified portfolio of certain assets that would diversify each other. And then the question is, what would gold play? When you ask me what gold, it would represent between 5 and 15% of a normal portfolio, because it does very well when the other assets don't do well. It's an effective diversifier. So if you had no views of the markets, that's what you would have. And central banks would have a higher percentage than they currently have, okay? So I would start with that view. Now, do I have, then you make tactical tilts from that, right. Okay? Now, in my tactical tilts, I have been clear for quite a while that I would tilt away from bonds and bonds, and I would be tilting toward gold and have a greater than normal amount of that. I'm also believe that we're in a...
Despite the run-up already, meaning you think it's still got...
You always keep, what is my amount that I'm going to keep? Okay? So don't pay so much attention. If I look at the run-up and I take what are the positions held by the entities that should hold what positions, they're still short of gold. Okay? So, but still, I'm not saying that it's what amount should I hold. Okay? Don't be overly active, and I don't think most people should be overly active, but do they hold the right amount to diversify? And the other part of the answer to the question is that I believe that we are in a wonderful technological revolution in which there's going to be new tech creating great disruptions, and not so much from, there are the hyperscalers and so on, but there's the impact of those on companies that are going to use that and so on. So I want a part of my portfolio to be in those kinds. So I'm kind of in a mixture of new tech and diversified with an element of gold. That's where my biases are. I'm not, forget my conclusion. Just know what neutral is, if you are a China, a Japan, Europe, okay, what do you do with your portfolio? What do you have? This is basic.
I'm not ready yet.
look, there's a lot going on in Davos. I know you see everything through the lens of 5 big forces. So money, debt, internal conflict, external conflict, acts of nature and technology, AI. There was so much concern about what the president was going to say here on tariffs. You put everything through capital. Are we living through a big capital war?
We haven't begun the capital war yet, and I think draw attention to it. I don't even think people think capital war. They hear a lot about trade war. And how does a capital war work, and what is happening today pertaining to the markets and so on? Okay. The big issue is the opposite side of a trade imbalance is a capital imbalance. And so we have an issue now with the changing complexion of what is owned by capital. So central banks buying gold and replacing bonds and other assets. We see these things happening. The changes in that mix. And so President Trump's speech was very, very important because there's a line, a red line, that has to do with military as it pertains to Greenland. And if there is a military move, it has capital war implications. But beyond that, the issue of what is held as a reserve currency and the whole capital issue is something that's extremely important, not paid much attention to, and not understood.
Right. A lot of U.S. policymakers or U.S. chief executives will push back. But for me, it's very clear that actually this week, if we are, relieved that the U.S. is not invading Greenland militarily, maybe there's a big shift, right, in this alliance. So is there going to be a big de-dollarization? Are you going to see countries outside the U.S. move away from the dollar quite quickly?
Generally speaking, you're seeing a diversification away from the U.S., right? Last year, U.S. markets had wonderful performance, but underperformed the rest of the world. And you're seeing a shift in the assets held, particularly, let's talk about money. In other words, when you look at the gold being up 67%, it's not a precious metal that goes up 60%. It was bought by central banks, particularly, but others, in order to diversify fiat currencies, not just dollars, okay? It also has to do with euros and so on. Fiat currencies, which are essentially debt instruments that get monetized, were the big move of last year. The biggest move, bigger than tech stocks, that was the biggest move.
What historical parallels are you seeing and worrying about right now?
Well, the similar breakdowns of the monetary system, if we're talking about the shifting to gold. There was a breakdown in 1971. Let's go to the monetary system. 1944, we say, what is our system of money? And it was gold, connections to the dollar and other currencies connected to that. And there was the process of creating a lot of debt, which is the claim on money. 1971, that breaks down, and then we go to a fiat monetary system. 2008, interest rates hit zero. We go to quantitative easing. In other words, debt monetization, the buying of a lot of that. 2020, we have COVID. Big deficits, essentially then big monetizations. With that pattern, there's been a weakening of the monetary system, meaning what is a storehold of wealth that's a medium of exchange that's accepted? That's an issue. And then when we get into a warlike environment, which we've experienced many times in history, countries do not like to hold each other's debts. They worry that some other country will sanction them, and also you print more money during such periods of time, which devalues money and devalues that debt.
So where are we in the longer-term debt cycle? And actually, what you most worry about over the next 1 to 2 years? What are markets missing?
Okay. I think that they're missing the value of money question, the debt and the understanding of the value of money. I don't think many people would think about, okay, here is what the value of money, and it was even bigger story than the tech stock story, okay? So I think they're missing that. I think what I worry about is that dynamic where what happens is it's a very simple dynamic, very easy to manage. When the debt cycle works, when debt and debt service payments rise relative to income, and then they squeeze out spending, and that becomes a problem. And they worry, and they also happen when the supply of the bonds is high relative to the demand. Right now, for example, there's a lot of holding of bonds, one man's debts or another man's assets. And if they don't have a high enough return, so what we get is the issue in terms of that supply.
Could we see a
demand.
meltdown?
I don't think we're going to see a meltdown. I think a meltdown, I think you almost could see a melt up. In other words, when you have devaluations, anyway, the capital, what's happening to the capital supply demand as it relates to money is the big story that is not enough attention, particularly if you cross that line like military action in Greenland would change in important ways the demand for those assets. Because you could look at those holding those assets.
Greetings.
We are in Abu Dhabi. You come here pretty often. We were just talking about the weather in Abu Dhabi and how it is like. And so, since we're on the ground and you have presence in this emirate and you come here pretty often, what do you think it would take for the UAE, whether it's Abu Dhabi or Dubai, to establish themselves as global asset management hubs? Or where do you think they are in their cycles right now?
I think, as you say, I've been coming here for 32 years, so I've watched it evolve from the founder, Sheikh Zayed, to his children, and I think it is the closest thing we get to a paradise in a world that's increasingly in trouble. And they have a great investment management expertise because they have lots of money that they manage for themselves. But when it's coming to money management, that creates a community in which other investment managers come here, and it creates this vibe like a Silicon Valley of investing. So this statement of capital is not just a buzzword, or a slogan. It is that if you want to be in almost the Silicon Valley of investment management, there's an excitement to being here. And it's particularly enhanced by the combination with AI. I would say these are the two biggest commitments. We think of Abu Dhabi as being oil, and of course it is. But really now, asset management, because of the amount of assets they have and how they're doing it, and also AI, because of the commitment that they made earlier and now, is creating that kind of vibe. And that's bringing together very interesting people to create a happening environment.
And we'll get to AI in a second. I want to hear your thoughts a little bit more about that. But we have been covering the, you say capital of capitals, and that's definitely been the motto that Abu Dhabi has been trying to push over the past few years. We see a lot of people coming in here, especially at the AGJM where we are today. But what do you think it would take for Abu Dhabi to become a place where people like you and others come here to invest, as opposed to come here to invest into other places in the world?
Well, it starts with the investor who's knowledgeable, and then it creates exposure to good investments. So there's a lot of interesting good investments that are being made that have been made by those who are here. And so the partnership and the sharing of that, the ability to co-invest or invest in that, if you have people who are doing it and they're in the neighborhood, and then there's good things to invest in, it'll happen.
So let's turn a little bit more global. You've spoken recently about a big historic shift being underway, whether it is fueled by AI disruption, whether it's fueled by mounting debt levels globally. What do you think the consequences of such a crisis are in the short term, especially on global macro markets?
Well, I'm a practical investor. I've done this for 50 years. But in order to understand today, I had to understand things that happened before my lifetime. The big cycles, what causes breakdowns of monetary system. So I studied the last 500 years, and there are 5 big factors, 3 of which operate in a big cycle. There is the debt cycle, the debt money cycle, and I'll touch on that in a minute. There is connected to the money and debt cycle is the political cycle within countries, the left and the right. Gaps in wealth and values cause populism of the left and the right, which means that there are irreconcilable differences. So we have problems along those lines. And number three, there's the geopolitical cycle, the world order, when rising powers challenge existing powers and existing systems. Those three are interrelated cycles: money, debt, the domestic economy, and the international economy. The fourth is through nature. Acts of nature, droughts, floods, and pandemics have been a big factor. They have killed more people than wars, and they can play a role. Certainly, it's playing a role. And then always throughout history is man's inventiveness, particularly of new technologies. And the inventiveness that we're seeing of the new technologies with AI particularly is clearly a force. So now, how does that play out? The first force is that we are having too much debt. Now, this is not just the United States. You're seeing this in England, you're seeing this in France, you're seeing this in China, you're seeing that dynamic. So that they can't increase the debt the way they did before. And then related to that is the politics. When you have these large wealth gap differences, who has the money? And when there's the accumulation of a lot of wealth that then isn't taxed, there's a tendency to want to tax that wealth. And that creates bubbles. In other words, when wealth is very different from money. In order to spend money, you have to sell wealth and get money.
Not while I'm in town.
I'm with you, friend.
I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need time to prepare that. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need time to do that. I need time to prepare that. I need time to do that. I need time to prepare that. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Not while I'm in town.
See some steel you need? What's still got some good in it?
I cannot do that here.
You face the Lord of Lies. Come, be crushed like the insects you are. This realm will be mine.
I'm not ready yet.
Who can stand against you with me at your side? Sin is deceiving.
Not while I'm in town.
How can I help?
Not while I'm in town. I cannot.
There's that. Don't ruin all that work. You can still use these.
Welcome to my home away from home.
I can break that down. The forge is always hot.
I cannot do that here.